My name is Naomi Cresswell. I'm 34 years old. 12 years ago, my husband's car was found abandoned at the edge of the Millbrook River Bridge during the worst flood this county had seen in 40 years. That same night, I was lying in a hospital bed 2 miles away, losing the baby we had spent 3 years trying to have. I raised our son alone. I believed my husband was gone forever. Then 3 weeks ago, my son came home from his very first week at his new job and said, "Mom, a man came up to me in the parking lot today. He said he's my dad." And what he showed me next unraveled 12 years of a life I had built on a lie. Before I tell you what really happened, please like this video and subscribe to HeartPath Stories. Tell me your city in the comments. Now let me tell you everything. 12 years ago, I was 22 years old and 5 months pregnant. We had lost 2 pregnancies before that one. So when the doctor said at the last appointment that everything looked good, I finally let myself breathe. I finally let myself believe we were going to be okay. My husband was supposed to be home by 8 that evening. He had a meeting 2 towns over and promised me he'd be back before dinner. I made pasta. I set the table. I sat down and I waited. 8 came and went. 9 came and went. I called him 4 times. No answer. I told myself he was probably stuck in traffic. The rain had been coming down hard all day, flooding roads, backing up every highway in the county. I told myself he was fine. I told myself to eat. But I couldn't. Just after 10, I felt something wrong. Not emotionally wrong, physically wrong. I called my neighbor. I was in the ER before 11. The baby didn't make it. And while I was lying there in that hospital bed, bleeding and broken and completely alone, a police officer walked into my room. He stood at the foot of my bed with his hat in his hands and told me they had found my husband's car. Parked at the edge of the Millbrook Bridge. Engine off. Door open. No sign of him anywhere. The river was 18 feet above normal. They searched it for 4 days. They found nothing. The official report said probable drowning, accidental. The water was moving too fast, too violent. If he had gone in, they said, recovery would have been near impossible. I signed the death certificate 6 weeks later. I sat in a church and listened to people say beautiful things about him at an empty casket service. I nodded. I thanked everyone. I went home to an apartment that still smelled like him, and I sat down on the kitchen floor for an hour because I didn't know where else to go. The life insurance paid out 4 months after. $60,000. I want to say I was grateful. The truth is, I would have given back every single penny to have someone sit beside me in that hospital room. To not have been so completely alone. I used the money carefully. I moved to a smaller place. I got our son into a good school district. I found work as a medical billing coordinator. Nights sometimes, early mornings when I had to. There were months I stretched $50 across 2 weeks. There were nights I sat at the kitchen table after my son went to sleep, doing the math over and over again, trying to make the numbers work, and sometimes they just didn't. And I had to accept that and try again in the morning. My son grew up watching me do that. I think it made him careful with money in a way I hadn't intended. He tracked every dollar from the time he was 14. He got a partial scholarship to state college. He graduated on time. 3 weeks ago, he started his first real job at a small accounting firm 40 minutes north of here. I was so proud of him. I cried in the car the whole way home from dropping him off on his first day. That was Monday. On Friday, he came home early. I knew something was wrong before he said a word. He closed the front door too slowly. He stood in the hallway 1 second, too long. He had that look on his face I hadn't seen since he was little when something happened at school that he didn't know how to tell me about. "What's wrong?" I asked. He walked to the couch and sat down. Then he said, "Someone came up to me in the parking lot today, at work." I turned off the stove. He knew my full name, he said. He knew what firm I'd just started at. He knew what school I went to. He looked at me. "Mom," he said, "he's my dad." The room went very still. "He's gone," I said. "He died 12 years ago." My son held up his phone. I didn't want to look. Something in my chest told me not to look. But I took the phone and I looked. The man in the photo was older, jaw softer, hair thinner. But the eyes. I knew those eyes. I had looked into those eyes on our wedding day. I had looked into those eyes across the pasta dinner I made, and he never came home to eat. I handed the phone back without a word. I talked to him, Mom. My son kept his voice careful and steady. He knew things. He knew the name of the street we used to live on. He knew about the pasta. He said you always made pasta when you were worried about something. That detail hit me somewhere I wasn't ready for. He wants to come here, my son said. He said you deserve an explanation. I stood very still for a long moment. Then I said, fine, he comes here once, and he talks. The house felt different that evening, heavier. I sat in the living room with my hands in my lap and kept my breathing even. 12 years of grief, 12 years of rebuilding, 12 years of learning how to be okay on my own. And now this. Now he was about to walk through my front door. When the knock came, my son looked at me. I nodded. He opened the door. And there he was. Older, heavier. A different kind of tired in his face than I remembered. But it was him. There was absolutely no question in my mind. It was him. He looked at me and said my name like it was an apology. I didn't respond. He sat down across from me. My son stayed standing near the door with his arms crossed. He told his story slowly. He said he didn't remember anything for a long time. He said the night of the storm he had pulled over on the bridge because something felt off with the car. And the next thing he knew, he was waking up in a field 2 counties over, completely disoriented. No ID, no phone, no memory of who he was. He said it took years for the pieces to come back. He said when they finally did, he didn't know how to find us. He said he was ashamed. He said he was sorry. He said all of it in this very calm, very rehearsed voice. And I watched him the entire time. Not his words, him. You said you had no ID, I said when he finished. He nodded. But the car, I said. Your car was found with the door open, engine off, your keys sitting on the seat. He blinked once. I don't remember that part. You turned the engine off, I said slowly. In the middle of a storm. At the edge of a bridge. And then you don't remember anything after that. He opened his mouth. I kept going. In 12 years, not once did you walk into a hospital, a shelter, a police station, and say you didn't know who you were. Not once. And I know because there are programs for that. Databases. Missing persons registries. I know because I filed one for you. And I checked it every single week for 3 years. The room was very quiet. Say something, I said. He didn't. My son spoke first. Why are you really here? That was the question. That was the one that cut straight through everything else. And that's when the knock came at the door. All 3 of us turned toward it. My son frowned. Are you expecting someone? I shook my head slowly. I walked to the door and opened it. A woman stood on the porch, mid-30s, dark coat. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me, directly at him. And the expression on her face wasn't surprise or confusion. It was the particular look of someone who has just confirmed something they already suspected. She said, you didn't tell them, did you? Not a question. He said nothing. She looked at me. I'm sorry to show up like this. I've been sitting in my car outside for almost an hour, trying to decide whether I should come in. She paused. I think you need to hear this from someone who has nothing to gain from telling you. I stepped back. She walked in. He didn't have amnesia, she said. The words didn't land loudly. They didn't need to. They settled into the room like something final. My son made a sound. She continued. I've been with him for 9 years. We met in Phoenix about 3 years after he left here. He told me he was a widower, that his wife had been killed in a car accident, that he had no children. Her voice stayed level even as her hands tightened around her purse strap. Last week I found a photograph in his desk. An old one, a young woman holding a baby. Your names were written on the back, both of them. I started looking things up. She looked at me. I found the police report, the bridge, the news article about the search. Silence. He drove that car to that bridge on purpose, she said. He left the door open. He left the keys. He walked away. My son said, why? She looked at the man still sitting on my couch. Do you want to tell them, or should I? He said nothing. He was staring at the floor. He had debt, she said. Business debt he had been hiding for over a year. The kind you don't come back from. There were accounts that had been drained. Arrangements that had been made. She paused and her voice tightened. And there was me, already in Phoenix. Already waiting. I felt something rise in my chest, and I pushed it back down hard. He knew exactly who he was every single day of the last 12 years, she said. He built a whole life. He has a house, a business, friends who think he is a good man. Her voice cracked on that last part, just slightly. I believed he was a good man. I looked at him then. Really looked at him for the first time since he walked in. Why come back now, I said. After 12 years, why now? He was quiet too long. She answered for him. I confronted him when I found the photograph. He panicked. I think he came here because he thought if he got out in front of it, if he had a story ready, he could control what happened. She looked at my son for the first time. He had found your photos online, when you graduated, when you started your new job. I think he thought he could come back with some version of the truth that made him look like less of what he actually is. My son looked at his father, and I had never seen that expression on his face before. Not anger, not tears. Something quieter than both of those. The particular look of someone watching something they needed to believe collapse right in front of them. The life insurance, my son said. His voice was completely steady. My mother collected $60,000 in life insurance on you, he said, because you were legally declared dead, because you staged your own death and made sure the payout would come. He looked at his father directly. That's insurance fraud. That's a federal crime. And you knew that money was coming when you drove to that bridge. The man on my couch had no answer for that. I need you to leave, my son said. The man looked up. I'm your father. No. My son didn't raise his voice at all. You were someone my mom sat up waiting for. You were someone she grieved. You were someone she told me stories about so I'd have something to hold on to. He walked to the front door and opened it. You were never a father. I need you to go. The man stood slowly. He looked at me one last time. I don't know what he was hoping to find there. I'm calling the FBI in the morning, I said. Insurance fraud has no statute of limitations in this state. I want you to know that before you get in your car. He walked out without another word. She stood in my living room for a moment longer. She looked the way people look when they have been awake, for days carrying something too heavy to put down. I didn't know, she said. I know you didn't, I said. I am so sorry. Her voice finally broke on it, just barely. So am I told her. She left. I heard 2 separate car doors close out on the street. 2 engines starting up. 2 sets of headlights pulling away in different directions. I closed the front door. My son was still standing in the middle of the living room. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he walked over and put his arms around me, and I held on to him the way I had held on to him when he was small and the nights were long, and I had nothing left but him to keep me going. We stood there like that for a while without saying anything. Then he said quietly, You did okay, Mom. You did more than okay. And I thought about the kitchen floor after the empty casket service. I thought about $50 stretched across 2 weeks. I thought about checking that missing persons database every single week for 3 years, because I had told myself I would, and I kept every promise I made to myself even when no one was watching. I thought about every version of my life I had imagined with a man who had already decided to leave. Some people make a choice to disappear and let you spend years believing it was something that happened to them. They let you grieve a story they wrote, so you will never look for the truth. But the truth has a way of finding you anyway, and when it does, you find out exactly how strong you actually became while you were waiting. I already knew what I was going to do next. And for the first time in 12 years, I wasn't afraid of any of it. If this story touched something in you, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe to HeartPath Stories. It means everything.